Banana
You
socks.
set the pace.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I always like being comfortable. And today, I'm really excited. I just spent the past 2 hours over at the Hilton in Bloomington, Minnesota, talking with Ducky Doolittle, who's here today on the Great Northern Sex Cast. Not only did I get information that I have forgotten over the past 29 years, everyone at my stores got amazing information. We got to talk about a great company and great product, and I'm thrilled that she's able to be here.
Yeah,
today.
we're in the same room.
we're not like going, is that working? That was what the last time we talked. It was over the airways, over the phone, and it was. This is so much better.
Oh, it's a million times better. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's super good to see you, Ducky Doolittle. And again, I mean, gosh, it's been over a year, I think.
Yeah, it's about a year or so. Last January, maybe.
So Colleen, why don't you set up Ducky's background just a little bit for us, if you would?
Oh, well, we have another Minnesotan in the room.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, she's got all that. Currently living in New York. Has been pretty much done everything in the sexual education. She's worked industry. Has worked retail. Has repped. Does advocacy. Does training on. You have degrees in. Oh my God! You mentioned it.
I'm a counselor.
Counselor. Thank you I'm going to let you do this because you know the wording. I know it in my head.
I'm a sexual assault and violence intervention counselor, which meant that I spent 8 years working as a first responder for adult and pediatric intimate partner violence and sexual assault cases as a patient advocate.
Oh my gosh. So to bring it into a realm where maybe somebody in our audience, like if they watch Special Victims SVU, you might have shown up on the scene after a violent crime and talked to the victim.
I would show up at the emergency room.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I wouldn't go to the crime scene. Mostly my entire job is a little bit like a quiet bouncer. I make sure there's no perp in the building, right?
Yeah.
And then my real job was to give all the power back to the survivor, all of it. So if it was my job to understand the law, and so if a police officer was asking for something that wasn't within their rights, I made sure they knew it. They could decide if they want to press charges or not press charges, do a rape kit or not do a rape kit. They could, what would happen with the rape kit do they have to do all 13 steps of the kit, things like that. But then also their medical rights. So I had to know a certain amount about the process of, care, and that let them know that they had the right to say no to anything that they wanted to. So it was very fulfilling work. Because to see somebody who'd just been perped on and say, no, that's your choice, and just teach them how to, not submit to any process in a time when they need that power back.
Yeah, because a lot of times folks are taught that, medical personnel and things that are going on are like all-knowing, like godlike beings. No. No, they're not.
Nothing I love to destroy than a false sense of authority.
Amen to that. I like that. Well, let me just, before we move on to some of the more, because you've got quite a resume here and I've got a lot of it here, but emotionally draining that must have been.
Well, I did a good job of, it's a burnout field, like any kind of social work. So first of all, I worked for a great program where I would debrief after every shift.
Okay.
So I had a counselor as a counselor. There's not enough of that in the world. So I had somewhere to go and take my thoughts so I didn't have to take them home with me. So the program I worked with was extraordinary in that way. And then I really just kind of listened to myself. I have experienced dark things in my lifetime, and I'm not afraid of darkness. And that means that I'm the right kind of person to show up and accept. It's like a very Buddhist sort of approach, to life. Like there's going to be darkness with the light, and if you accept that, then you can move through the darkness with a little more ease. And I think that was helpful, the perspective I had. But before I burnt out, I quit because you can't do that for your lifetime, I think the average person lasted about 16 months in the position, and I managed to do 8 years. So,
oh my word! Wow,
I feel proud of the work I did. I'm glad I did it. I won't do it again.
Yeah.
It's good to be above average.
Yeah, wow, that's overachieving to be sure. Yeah, but what a giving back sort of thing. And on some other, resume aspects, if you will, you've appeared on a lot of different shows. You've been on Real Sex on HBO. You've been on MTV, NPR, Howard Stern, Playboy TV, many, many other things. And you've got a book called Sex with the Lights On, 200 Illuminating Sex Questions Answered. That's a lot. That's a great body of work.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm still going too.
Yeah?
I'm not done.
For sure. I got to know what it was like being on Howard Stern.
Well, one thing that helped is that I really didn't know who he was.
Alrighty then.
It was great. He was actually very good to me. I think, what I think people who have a hard time on his show, maybe their expectations are off. You have to accept the person and the situation for what it is. But I think you could see that I was an intelligent person, and we just laughed. And I'll be honest. Like I said, I know darkness. I come from a very rough place. I was raised by the state, grew up in foster care, was emancipated at 16, homeless by 17. And in my 20s, that was a long time ago, I was on a show. But in my 20s, no one had any expectations for me. Like some people, they have parents and the parents are like, you should go to college or you should, you should get married or you should do this or you should do that. But no one had any expectations for me. So my 20s, I did a lot of fucking around. Mm-hmm. I did a lot of goofing off.
I did too, but I thought I had a purpose. That's worse. At least you knew what you were doing, in a manner of speaking.
Well, and I'd sell sex toys, and then I did a lot of burlesque. I did, I really could do whatever I wanted because no one was there to tell me I couldn't or judge me, which is why I could do well, in retailing adult toys. You have a lot of beautiful, fortified misfits. You've been. How many employees do you have that are beautiful misfits?
Oh, we're all, yeah, because when you see an advertisement for saying part-time, full-time work, fantasy gifts, almost 40 years ago, a lot of folks may not have known what fantasy gifts is, but they certainly know what it is now when they call up. And so you have to be comfortable with people telling you things, and you have to be comfortable sometimes sharing, and then knowing where the lines are.
And you have to be comfortable being judged sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
You know that because your family has done this.
I've always been judged. It's been, it used to be sort of an eyebrow raising thing. And now I know more things about my friends' sex lives over the years because they try. And when I was younger, I didn't know how to deal with it. But now that I'm 52, I'm like, okay, they trust me with this, and I'm going to take that as an honorable thing, as a lovely thing.
But I would also like to put the badge on you of being a beautiful misfit because you have been forced to move through the world in a different way. It's easier today than it used to be. But even today, you see that like you'll have a certain person start working in adult retailing, selling sex toys or something like that. And no matter how hard you try as you hire them in, is your family going to be okay with this? Is your partner going to be okay with this? And we lose good people because they can't go home and face the judgment.
Yeah, folks have just said, I love it, but my mom found out. I mean, this is someone that was in their late 20s.
Yeah.
But they were unable to, continue on because their mom found out that this is what they were doing. And I said, okay, I suggested if things change, you're wonderful, come on back. This, it's going through there. But that still happens.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's because there are people in their lives that have expectations for them that are different than what we do for a living. So I've found over the years as, an orphan, as a former foster youth, as a punk, as, a queer person, I found over the years that these are my people. And that's one of the reasons I still love training staff today as I look out and I see these beautiful, fortified souls who are finding their way. And they are important. The work that we do with sex toys, it's really important work. So I like to fuel them and give them their power. But anyway, I didn't have much of a purpose at the point when I was on Howard Stern, so it was a perfect place for me to be. Now I have a purpose. But
would you go back?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because really, honestly, there's not. I think a lot of times the people that get eviscerated by people like Howard Stern are people that have something to hide, so to speak, or some sort of image that they're trying to project out there. And he's so great at poking holes and deflating that crap. But the people that go in there like, yeah, this is me and your problem is, are some of the best interviews in my opinion, because he's like, oh, okay. And then there's great conversation.
No, I spanked him with a rubber chicken.
Nice. Nicely done, you. God, what a thing to be able to say bucket list much. I spanked Howard Stern with a rubber chicken.
Yeah, no, I've never done any rubber chicken spanking. I didn't know that was on a list, and now I'm like, damn.
In your BDSM section of your store, suddenly rubber chickens start showing up.
That's the clown sex and comedian sex section of the store.
Yeah. Oh, there's something for everyone. Kelly finds a different fetish with a nice Latin name all the time, and we're like, if you can think about it, someone probably gets off on it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Every once in a while we come up with one that we have not run across before, and it's getting increasingly difficult because we've been doing this show for over 3 years now. So my God, how many more can there be?
There's more, I assure you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So just real quick, I'm going to put this in the show, in our description on the show so that you can look Ducky up. But ohilikethis.com, and it's ohilikethis.com. You can find her there. So Ducky, let's talk a little bit. I know the last time we had you on, we talked about the education that you do. And what were you two doing this morning?
Well, Ducky's here as a rep for Blush, a company that makes amazing products, products for men, products for women across the spectrum. It's not just a one item company. But one of the things that's lovely is that the freedom she has to just talk about sexual health and education in general. I mean, we had a lovely diagrams of body parts today. We're learning more about that. I mean, that there's more than, as you put it, more than just fallopian tubes. I love that because I never thought about it. I mean, everybody knows what that cartoon diagram. But you learn about more male body parts, where the muscles are, stuff like that. And I mean, it got back to some of the products, but it was more about how do you sell that? How do you talk to folks? What about, making sure that the folks that were in there felt valued for their contribution. And it really was lovely. And we did find out that there is a biodegradable product coming out, which we're going to have to get in. It was a line. We're like, this is exciting. There's no plastic packaging in it. Everything goes in there. We're like, oh, we are going to have to get this in. I saw Tara writing it down. Just scribbled. I just have a glance over. She was 2 people over to my left. I'm like, yeah, she likes that one.
There goes the buyer.
I try not to interfere with that because she needs to be able. I mean, that's her job. She needs to be able to choose. I mean, I will go through things and say, this looks interesting. What do you know about this? Going through there. But if I wanted to be the buyer, I would be the buyer. That's her job.
That's so good. Though. Yeah. You do have to trust people to do their job.
Yeah, because there's too much. I mean, honestly, I'm glad I don't have that job.
Well, and
there's too many things.
Blush has 11,000 products. Do you realize that? The company I work for has 11,000 products, which run the gamut. All body safe, all, but every kind of person, every kind of sex. We just continue to sort of build on our catalog of products. But to what she was saying there is that Blush doesn't restrict what I can come and train on. And so knowing fantasy gifts as I do, all I wanted to do was to get together with the staff and fortify them. And anything that we can do as a company at Blush or anything, they'll let me do anything I want. There's no rules or restrictions because they trust me like you trust your buyer. And they said, go train on whatever you want. So I always fold in some product, but I'll tell you something, the fantasy gifts staff, they're really intelligent. They train each other. They understand product. So the fact that I could come in and talk about pleasure anatomy, reaffirm what they know and reaffirm their value in the world, and then give them big fat gift bags.
Oh yeah,
raise over their nodding. We've got an in-studio audience today along with studio dog Fred. It's so cool. Well, you know what? Let me ask you this, Ray, because Ducky, actually, I was looking at Ray. You know, I have long suspected, I've been interacting with the Fantasy Gifts staff now for years, doing the show and whatever, and I've always been awed by just how intelligent they are, how much they know, how much they care about the customer, and really helping them find what they want and or need and educating them. But do you find in your nationwide travels and all of that they really are an exceptional staff?
They are an exceptional staff, but I will be honest, and a lot of that starts at the top. Like what I find at this company is that the staff has been here sometimes for decades.
Yep.
And that's because they're being treated well, and that in turn is why they treat their customers well. So one of the first questions I ask when a store or a company wants me to come in and train is, you know, or you saw me do it today, I ask people who's been here less than a year, who's been here more than a year, who's been here more than 2 years. I knew I could have gone up to like 29 years and people would still have their hands up at Fantasy Gifts, because they can have a career with this company in a retail environment that's so rare in the world. So that tells you that it starts at the top.
Yeah, and I learned that from my dad.
Yeah, and your managers, your managers adopt your style and they move it forward. So coming here and training this company is really worth the investment for a company like Blush to send us out here, send all the free product and do all that, because we know that the training we do is going to last. Now, if there's a store and they turn their workers every 3 months, I know the workers aren't happy, which tells me the customers aren't happy, which tells me my training has no value. And so it's much harder for me as a person to invest in those stores, because I want to be with the people who are taking care of the people. Because product be damned, it's all about the people, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, you know, we still have, you know, hopefully, you know, we still have, you know, 8 locations, you know, after, you know, even with, you know, Amazon, you know, breathing down our necks. But, you know, we try and, you know, explain to people that, you know, there's a value in a retail experience. You know where the product came from. You can see what's going on, because there are issues with, let's say, faux products. I mean, you know, you talked about how the people will knock things off.
Yeah, counterfeit products.
Yeah, counterfeit products. And I work really hard to make sure everything in my store. I mean, I'm using my name out there. I used to do TV commercials. Hi, I'm Colleen from Fantasy Gifts. I used to, you know, stuff like that. I would do the voiceovers on stuff. So my name's out there. I'm not gonna have that. You know, I don't want anyone out there, you know, saying things, you know, with my name behind it that aren't true.
Well, and I don't think anything will ever replace the experience of being able to walk into an adult store by yourself, with your lover, with your friends, on a Saturday night after, you know, a couple beers, or on a Sunday morning when you're supposed to be at church. You know? Everybody has their different reasons for going at different times for different things, and that ability to then also do the this or that experience, where you look at the wall of what they have and go, do I want this or do I want that, or is that going to work with my body, and then to have these people, you know, that will have an honest conversation with you. You were saying, somebody on your staff was saying that doctors keep sending people to you, which is so beautiful.
We do, and as going through there, I've you know, they'll say, well, go check this out or go do this. And the only place in, you know, there's other places in town, you know, and go there too. I mean, as long as you get your stuff, I'm happy, you know. But it has, I mean, from day one. I mean, folks used to, my dad said folks came in and he goes, I don't know where, but someone's sending them in. And my dad's like, great. He was going through there. And it was always fun too, because my mom would work the stores and her background was a nurse. And so people figured out, you know, and they felt comfortable with my mom behind the store. And my dad, it was good because, I mean, he's a short, bearded Italian guy. I used to be able to smoke in the store. He'd still have his cigarette. He'd be chatting with folks. But they made him feel comfortable.
Yeah. How did an Italian end up in Minnesota?
He always said he got stranded. He always said he had a different business. He was in the employment agency.
How funny.
Yeah, and we ended up here. So I've been here. You know, I'm not a native Minnesotan. It says Kentucky on my birth certificate. There's nothing Kentucky about me other than that. I do like bluegrass, but other than that, I mean.
What about bourbon?
Bourbon sometimes. Not really. No. Much more. The German side takes over. I like beer.
So, before we get into some of the stuff, because you just mentioned the medical profession, kind of referring people, Ducky, you disclosed on your blog in October of last year that you had a bout with endometrial cancer, and since you've been speaking about it, we'd love to hear how you discovered it, kind of what's gone on with your treatment, and thankfully we've got positive news to report there, don't we?
Yeah, I'm alive.
That's a good start, but there's a little more detail to that, so I'm going to let you kind of take it away.
Yeah, it's pretty new. So this is probably the first time publicly I'm talking about it.
Oh my!
Beyond, I've written about it, and that's been my blog. I talk about it a lot. That was kind of a survival tactic. One, I was like, I find that there's so little information about gynecological cancers out there. Recently, I found out that's because a lot of people don't survive. Ooh. A lot fewer survive than do breast cancer. So one problem we have is we have a limited amount of funding because we don't have as many patient advocates because not as many of us survive, which is really sort of heartbreaking, And that includes, mine was endometrial cancer, but that includes cervical cancer as well, and ovarian cancer. So those three cancers together are well underfunded and in a little bit of trouble these days. So I decided, because there was so little information out there, that as a sex educator, I needed to talk about the experience. I needed to tell people what was happening with my body, and to be and do it. Any shame I needed to set aside for the sake of other survivors. And hopefully, help somebody, which by the response from my blog I have. So I feel really proud about that. But yeah, I don't know. I had, I'm 47, so I'm a little bit young for cancer, but I started to bleed. It was like a pretty abrupt change in how my monthly cycle was happening. And then another big sign was I started to develop bruises, and I'm very fair skinned, and they were not like impact bruises. And I was like, ooh, this doesn't sound good. Like, I don't know what to do about this, and it's my job to be conscious in my body. I caught it very early. I went to my gynecologist. I had a gynecologist that heard me and sent me in for a biopsy.
Yeah. Because I know that can be very difficult with folks not taking female pain seriously, or not taking what's going through there. I've always been very lucky being with doctors, listening to me. I was 17 years old. My doctor believed me and said, when I said I had cramps.
Yes.
And I know that is not the norm.
Yeah. And that is a big problem we go back to that thing about authority, right? Mm-hmm. You're the authority on your body. And so when you go in, every once in a while there's an extraordinary doctor, but a lot of doctors, to get through their days, they choose not to get too engaged with the person in front of them. So it's easier to give the simple answer and the simple fix, because if you spend your day listening to people complain about their body, I imagine it's hard to stay connected. But I did have a good doctor. She got me in for a biopsy, and I was trying to be sneaky. I was like, is this really necessary? Like, I'm a jerk, There I am trying to talk her out of doing what my body needed because I didn't want to face it. But the biopsy came back with cancer, and then I went in and had, which was really kind of crazy, was a complete hysterectomy, including my ovaries, and that brought on abrupt premature menopause. Mm-hmm. So I'm a few months into that, which is also a trip, because I was like,
you're preaching to the choir, honey.
I'm tripping out because I was terrified about what this would mean for me. Like, you don't know what it is, and you hear stories, but who's talking about that with enough clarity and realness and warmth and self-love? Not enough people. So now I'm talking about menopause for the first time in my life, because I've always had a policy of not talking about things I haven't experienced. I wasn't going to tell a 52-year-old woman how, what menopause was. I felt like I needed to respect her more than that. Well, now I don't need to respect her anymore. I'm going to tell her what it's about.
No, yeah, because bodies change. I think, I've always been this way. I think a lot of people have that set in their brains, and they're not really want it to be different. You know, no, you're going to change.
Well, here's the other thing that I've learned, though, over the years, and especially now, is everybody who goes through chemo, every female who goes through chemo goes through menopause. Sometimes it's temporary, and sometimes it's permanent, and they do not know in the process what's going to happen. And so this has helped me become a more compassionate sex educator, become a more passionate human being. You know, compassionate in terms of like recognizing, because why aren't those women allowed to speak more freely about their experience? Because we put value on the ability to breed, right? Which is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, you know. We put value on youth, which doesn't necessarily equate, you know. So all of my role models are changing. All of my ideas about life are changing. And here I'm still just a few months out of surviving. And you know, my head's just spinning. I'm just tripping. Everything's just crazy. You know, I'm afraid I'm going to get cancer again.
Oh, I'm sure.
Know, which is very common. You know, a common experience for people. Like now I have to go through this. And a lot of survivors are like, you know, the people around them feel like, well, you survived. It's done now.
No, I have 2 friends that went through breast cancer. One said she found a lump, and then that made us all think, when was the last time we had our boob squished? And so we all went in and had our boob squished. And then another gal went, oh, my God, I have it. And so these gals had known each other since they were like in kindergarten, and here they were going through this, and then different, but they're different people. So things that were happening to one weren't happening to another, and this and that, and so we learned a lot. You know, learned a lot from the rest of us to how they're dealing with it. You know, do you reconstruct? Do you not reconstruct? How do you do it? How far is each person willing to go?
You know, which treatments do you adopt?
And it's not this. I mean, it's like the thing about cancers is that it's different on every person, and that was something that I didn't know before close friends went through it.
Well, now they're starting to. They just made this proclamation that they're going to stop talking about cancers as related to the part of the body. Because you can have a lung cancer and a breast cancer that have the same molecular structure. You can have, so rather than having breast cancer, they're going to start to redefine cancers according to how they cluster and how they form. Because that will very much change how they treat people. Rather than treating them for breast cancer, they'll start to examine what kind of cancer they have in the breast. And this is going to make cancer treatments that they've developed for, say, the pancreas or for, you know, the ovaries available to people who really needed it for their breast. And so it's changing a lot. And then the crazy thing is I went in just a few days ago and got the results to my genetic testing. And as it turns out, I have something called MSH6, which is a genetic condition. So there's nothing I could have done in my lifetime to change the fact that I would develop. I have an 80% chance of developing cancer. But now that we have genetic tests, what happens is we realize it runs in my family. We can't figure out which parent because, of course, I'm an orphan, but getting all my siblings tested, which will in turn find out they have a 50% chance of having it. If they have it, their kids have a 50% chance of having it. But we're going to give the younger generations a chance to be proactive. Because if they knew I had MSH6 when I was 18 years old, they would have said, have your kids now and get rid of your cervix, your ovaries, your uterus immediately. That's how aggressive this cancer is. They would have done this to me. They would have had the radical hysterectomy as young as possible to extend my lifespan.
Just a quick question, just to make sure that I'm following. So the genetic testing and that MH6 revelation, did that determine the area in which you would most likely experience cancer as well, or just cancer overall?
Well, the kind of genetic difference that you have, because it's not a flaw, it's just a difference, right? It does for a lot of people determine the kind. Will it be colon cancer or endometrial cancer or breast cancer? The joy in MSH6 is it can be endometrial, colon, pancreatic, brain, skin. It's like everything.
Jeez, okay.
So I've kind of got a pretty miserable strain of this stuff. But I'm looking at it going, at least I was able to do that today. At least I can be proactive, and I'll probably get cancer again, but we will be able to catch it early.
Because you'll be looking for things.
The rest of my stupid life, I will be taking tests every year on every part of my body to assess is there cancer, and getting rid of it. So the truth is, with this kind of condition, I'm stacked to have a pretty painful, expensive life. It's okay. I'm alive. I can look up at the stars. I can walk my dog. I can make a garden. It's miserable, but I'm here. And I have tools that people didn't have before me. But now the tools that I'm starting to latch onto will mean that my nieces and nephews, because I don't have kids, but my nieces and nephews will be able to test themselves when they turn 18 and be able to make proactive choices. That's probably why I was never able to have kids, because my body wasn't, I wasn't supposed to have kids. So, but they may choose to have kids younger because they know that this cancer is, this genetic difference exists in their body. So it's power. I have power that people before me didn't have.
Yeah, because they've done a lot of, the majority of testing also has been done on male test subjects, and women react differently to things, and so they're looking at it differently. And so another thing that's happening is that they're making laws and doing some things that say that X number of people have to be of color, X number of people have to be women in these tests, because pretty much everything has been done on white males that are about 152 pounds.
Okie dokie.
And people react differently.
Yeah.
And so that's what all this stuff is coming around, is that, my kid's not genetically related to me, but she's going to have more information available if something's happening.
Because she can genetically test. She can get genetic tested.
Because she can test for it. Because I can't say that, like arthritis runs in the family. My mom's had 2 knees. My brother probably needs a hip. My sister might need a knee. I didn't get that. I just got the crappy lungs. But, we don't know what she's going to get. Yeah. And so being able to, for her to look into that, she's 17, beginning to think about what's going on. Because they've got information at their fingertips.
Well, and they're for the first time starting to get more organized, though, because they do, but the organizations haven't been talking to each other. So they're asking me to submit my information so that I can become part of the pool of information to help people. Like I said, you've got people doing breast cancer who are treating the same kinds of cancers that other people have in their colon, but because they're thinking it's about body parts and not about molecules, then they're not sharing their information, and we're not moving as quickly as we will. And even in the time, like my genetic testing brochure had 64 genetic markers they were going to look at. By the time I showed up, that piece of paper was outdated. We tested for 68. That's how quickly things are happening. But, cancer is nature. So, and, we've got a long way to go. We don't know, I don't even know if we can stop it, because it's just our bodies changing, and that's what they're meant to do. So it's a lot.
And to look into it, from once you're not dead, you still get to live. You know what I mean? And how do you work around that? Because things are different. I mean, a gal that years ago had been to a gynecologist, for decades, went in and realized that she had cancer and everything had to come out. And she didn't really know. I mean, they handed her the most awful, uncomfortable looking plastic dilators. And to deal with that, once she had all the stuff removed, and once she had what she called the atomic tampon, and she's doing that sort of stuff, and I was able to, at least because of I knew her, I was able to get her decent glass, items, the right lube, the right things to work with it, versus the stuff I'm like, things, and that was 20 years ago, and now there's so much more stuff out there, but there's still so much.
But people are still showing up to your store after surviving cancer or after going through menopause, and you still have better products than a person can find at Walgreens.
Oh, yeah.
You still have better products,
for sure.
But nobody's explaining that. That's why I to this day believe a good sex shop is a community center. When you get the right workers in place, and they can, you get these connective conversations happening. I think it's magical. So,
Yeah, I mean, folks are more comfortable in asking questions, but that's some folks.
Some folks.
Well, okay, I have a parallel for that, for what Ducky just said, because we made a trip out to Colorado recently. My fiance and I did. And very interestingly, we went to a dispensary.
I was going to say you smoked weed. Okay, go on.
Okay, well, we went there. But what cracked me up about it was that the people that worked in this place, well, first of all, the lady was from Wisconsin, which completely cracked me up. But her story was that she was married to a combat veteran with PTSD, and they moved to Colorado, and she got into that business because all this horrible chemical crap that he was taking wasn't helping his physical injuries or his mental stuff. And now he's doing all of this, and that's how she got into the business. And she was amazing. And she kind of reminded me of the spirit of the kind of people, you know, that you were. And I noticed in your resume that you're married to a combat veteran. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. But the people that are really passionate about helping, and she really knew like an amazing amount of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I have hot flashes. And she went on for half an hour. And it was amazing.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. But that's another industry that kind of they're going through what you guys did 30 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, my mom and dad didn't know what any of this stuff was. And people would ask about this or that and he'd get it in. And my dad's answer was yes. And then he would figure out where to get it. And then he would like blue label it in from UPS, trying to figure it out because he figured folks know what they want. I mean, he listened to them. I mean, he didn't know what he was doing, but he knew to listen to his customers, and then he figured things out over the years. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, my dad was a salesperson, but he realized what he was doing was helping folks. He said, well, maybe I should get more of this stuff in because it was more of a novelty store. But and when I turned to him when I graduated from college and said I can have a job, he's like, yeah. And so that was easy. And we just sort of have taken it over. I don't know if my dad consciously knew sort of what he was building. I think he figured it out, before he went. But because it was also, everything was still sort of hush-hush.
Yeah.
But his answer, we didn't have back rooms in the store. He figured, well, why would you be embarrassed about it? But I don't think he consciously sat down and made a business plan and said, I'm going to grow this sexual health empire. He just was he was good at reading people at what they needed.
Yeah, and probably a little fearless. I mean, you had to be pretty fearless at the time to get into this industry. So he was unafraid, non-judgmental, obviously. Yeah. That'll take you a long way in our industry to decide you're not going to, as long as you're not hurting anybody else or yourself, have at it. That alone makes people go, okay, I'm safe to buy this here.
Yeah, because, honestly, if you just looked at him, you wouldn't have gone, well, this is a guy that knows about sex toys. You just, no. It was not, it's just not the impression you're going to get. But he was really like what people do, and he never could figure out why anyone would care what somebody else did in their bedroom.
Yeah, that's his magic.
Yeah, and then
person he doesn't judge.
And I don't remember ever having this conversation with him, but I grew up that way. I'm just like, huh? So I don't know, just somehow through osmosis I got it, because I never did have the talk with my parents.
Modeled it.
But somehow, that must have been it. I just learned from them. I for the life of me, I can't remember any of my parents sitting me down and saying, well, this is how your body works. I just figured. I think they probably just had a conversation. My mom being a nurse or something. I have no memory of the talk.
Our generation, we're lucky if we got somebody told us what menstrual pads were. Oh, menstrual pads.
I still remember fourth grade when they separated the boys and the girls, and I'm like, everybody. I already knew. I don't know how I knew. I read a lot. I don't know. I'm very curious. I probably read about it.
Well, when it comes to, maybe post-illness or even just changing, bodies over a lifetime or even after a baby, Ducky, I know that you've got a seminar on sex after a baby, but you also do talk about intimacy after illness and stuff. Kind of touch on some of the work you do in those areas.
Well, I think I certainly didn't do it. I didn't get into that kind of those kinds of topics until after I had worked for many years as a counselor. Working as a counselor, you only last so long in that industry because it's really heavy. You carry a lot of people's pain. You have hard days in the ER, and when I decided, okay, I'm going to leave that before I burn out, I knew there was no doubt I would go back to pleasure-based stuff. I'd never completely left it, actually. And so, but one thing that it did is it helped me fold in the topics that are a little bit more emotionally heavy in with pleasure-based stuff, because people will come into a sex shop and they oftentimes won't even realize that they've got this heavy question, but then they start to realize, oh, these people aren't judging me, and then they start to sort of unfold a little bit, and then the next thing you know, they're saying, well, my wife had a baby 3 months ago, but we're still not having sex, and here you've got this 22-year-old who's never had kids, maybe never had a relationship that was that serious, having to address a question that's real life, that's life cycle based,
Okay.
And so I like to get them to understand that they need to be ready for those questions, but also that they don't have to have the answer to those questions. It's okay to say, I don't know. That's a really important place to find yourself, to say, and that, and that's intelligent. That's the intelligent answer. If you don't have the answer, to say you don't have the answer. But so over the years, I've begun to talk about things like sex, ability, disability, sex and unwanted pain, sex after baby, keeping bonded, and that stuff. It comes up in sex shops every single day. Now, what can I do as a sex educator to fortify that staff to be ready to handle difficult medical questions, or handle a drunk, inappropriate person, or handle all the things because they're not selling T-shirts or electronics, they're selling sexuality products, and it's a bigger thing. So, that's why I do the work I do. But that's why Blush wants me. Mm-hmm. Because I take a great brand and help stores be stronger. It's like a perfect pairing, and like I said, they don't have any restrictions on what I can do. I can go to a store and teach sex and unwanted pain, never talk about a single Blush product, but it's good for the brand, it's good for the store, it's good for the people who show up, it's good for me as a sex educator.
Yeah, because a lot of times it's trying to discern what the customer is really asking, and that just takes some time. Mm-hmm. And it's going through there, but some folks pick up on it really fast, some need a little more, but they get it. It takes time. But having the seminars we have, having different things going on, it helps everyone, because guy's not going to have a baby, or most aren't. There's some, but knowing what's going on is important. And these are just things. I mean, years ago, we were just saying, well, okay, this is a butt plug. You use it for, for anal pleasure. You don't use this. I mean, it was more mechanics.
Nuts and bolts.
Yeah, nuts and bolts. And, but they still need that, because now, new folks are always coming up, but people, now that they have the nuts and bolts, they want to know more. And I want to make sure the folks know.
Well, in your stores, they're not going anywhere. People know you. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they come in once, they case the joint. They're like, am I safe here? Is anybody going to watch me shop? Can I ask an honest question? What kind of people work behind the counter? What kind of products do you have? And then they come back. And each time I think they come back, they start to realize, this is a neighborhood store. This is a my community store.
I did have one customer who said that one of our employees was too knowledgeable, and I had no idea.
What does that mean?
I had no idea how to deal with that question, and all I could do was, when I was responding to it, was, well, possibly, maybe you're the person that should shop online.
That's actually a really good answer.
True, but it took me like 2 days, because it was to figure out how to answer like this paragraph email, because I didn't know
what email. It was a paragraph.
Yeah,
email.
Like this whole thing about going through there, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I usually take about 24 hours to respond to most things, because I do have a slightly I can get snarky, and I don't want to do that. I need to realize, okay, where is this person coming from? What's going on? What are they really asking? What do I need to respond to? But that was one time in almost 40 years where I had someone say that the person was too knowledgeable, and I realized that this person was probably still embarrassed. And, I'm like, okay. And I said, well, here's something, and I was able to go through there. But it did take me about 2 days to.
It's not a very logical statement.
Yeah, to parse it out and realize what was really going on.
Yeah.
But that was different.
That's
it was going through because I get those. I mean, this is what I get. I respond to that. I respond to all the Google stuff that's going through there. It's me.
Well, earlier in today's training, I was talking about there's always logic to illogical behavior. So this person had an idea in their head of what they wanted. They probably didn't want to have a conversation, an intelligent conversation. They probably wanted to maybe have a flirtatious experience, or maybe have it's hard to say what they were looking for, but you obviously your business is too smart for that. They got to find a dumber shop somewhere.
I love that you took them to the internet. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, oh, well, we've got this going on because we have the stores, and I'm building a new website right now because I do need a web presence. I mean, most people need to find out where the store was. They like to pre-shop. They like to do things. I can't not have that. But it's really tough to maintain it because things are always changing in security. Things are always changing, and this is going through there. So hopefully in the next week or two, we'll have our local one, reset up. And then I got to go through and I got to take a look at all of my all of my information to make sure it's updated, because I'm constantly doing that too. I write all that, and it's going through.
I don't think that there's been a time that I've known you in 3.5 years that you haven't been working on a new website. I swear to God.
It changes. I mean, PayPal changes it, and then we go through, and then a bank doesn't like the platforms anymore. I mean, it's a constant battle. I have no idea how. I mean, but I've got to have it, and so it's just, and I don't. I can't compete with the bigger companies, but it needs to be there as a reference, and so. The battle between trying to keep it up and running and have it be functional, it's constant.
And it'll never be perfect.
No,
that's the other thing. You could work your lifetime 24 hours a day, and you can't. It's forever needing to be edited, and just do the best you can do, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, and we do a good job. At least the one fun web thing is the Facebook page, which Megan and I.
We had to take. Things changed on that. We've got. I mean, how much social media do we have? Each store has Facebook. Then there's a main Facebook, and then each store has a Yelp, and each store has a Google. We have the Twitter. We have the Great Northern Sexcast has a Twitter. There's the Pinterest page. I haven't done that forever. There's the Instagram. I mean, it's just...
It never ends.
It never ends trying to maintain all of that. At least as far as I know, nothing new has appeared. Because occasionally I look at my daughter and go, what are you guys doing? Do I need a Snapchat? No. No one's going through there. What are the folks in their teens using? Because none of them are using, Facebook in early 20s and stuff like that.
I don't think that the general population also understands. They're still so tightly locked into Facebook. But for our industry, Facebook is really very dead because as companies, we can't advertise.
No.
They try to whitelist us as much as possible. So unless you go and really engage with our sites, you can't even see the work that we do.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, it is very rare that I get more than a few people engaged in what's going there. I mean, it's there in case someone wants it, and I've got to maintain it.
Yeah, we got to keep the placeholder.
But the Twitter and Instagram's getting more. We had to move Man Meat Monday and Wild Woman Wednesday over to Twitter because it got the gorgeous picture of a male got tagged, and I can't afford to have the whole site taken down. So poor Megan had to delete 3 years of Wild Woman and Man Meat. She was so it was its own separate albums and stuff like that. But I mean, yet I still constantly get advertiser, you can boost this, and I'm like, no, I can't. You won't let me.
Yeah, they're just trying to make money.
But honestly, I mean, they won't do it. We once tried to boost a picture of just a kitten. Wouldn't do it because they've got my sites already sort of in their system. So I think we're attempting to do more on Instagram, more on Twitter,
Yeah, those are the two platforms I find are the most dynamic. Because they don't mind us. They don't mind that we're a little dirty. Yeah,
that's going through there. But it's just like, but just just more places, and then to keep them all organized. For the longest time, we're still having. I'm calling it extortion money. I got to pay a company to make sure, because I can't get through to Google directly. Folks, when they're trying to use Google Maps is sort of leaving them stranded on Highway 13.
Oh,
they've rearranged it. You can't just turn off it's just, oh my God. But I can't fix that myself. There's no way that I can get a hold of Google as an individual business and say, your map is wrong. I need you to do this. But there's an intermediate company that can do that. Plus, people think of Google and Bing and Yahoo and a bunch. There's like 40 or 50 other search engines out there. And each one of your things, your address has to be listed the same. To keep all this maintained keeps you on the top of the search engines. You put in fantasy gifts, I come up first. But I can't afford the word like rabbit vibe. Right, because it's too expensive. So you've got to maintain all these different things that some of it's the same as a business that sells tires and some of it's completely different. I'm like, because really, because how many we get phone calls all the time going, where exactly is your store? Because they're stuck on 13.
I'm so glad that you do that work, and as a manufacturer rep, I don't have to, we don't need to be found by anybody. We just need you to be found.
And then the amount of people were like, it's a warehouse here. I don't actually have a retail space, but I would at least once a week someone comes up to the door, they find it. So I said, no, they're like so disappointed because they're hoping there was like some hidden. I'm like, no, you got to go to the St. Louis Park, excuse me, or the Bloomington store. So there are no dildo sales in Edina.
You come in here and you could be selling real estate or something. Yeah. It's so tame in your office.
Well, that's where we're looking for, because my sister still has younger kids, so is my brother. But so I needed a place because of laws that there was an office section and a toy section, the working section. There is rarely anything on this side of the building where the offices are that doesn't look like any other office. Yeah. Because I brought my kid here. I still bring my kid here. She's got like 6 months until she can legally walk on the other side.
Well, there's so many. I don't think people realize that so many of us inside the industry of adult products this is how our office is too. We have, our owners have kids, and we have to be able to. And we're not weirdos. We're not perverts. We're not hanging around with stuff all day long. I think it's so funny. To us,
you don't look like you sell sex toys. Yeah, it's just all the time. My mom used to get it and all that. You look like a kindergarten teacher. Well, Mom's like, what am I supposed to look like? It was always so cute. Going through there.
Well, I want to ask about a couple things from Blush. Or actually, I don't know. These might be your own words. I'm not entirely sure.
Let's find out.
Artisanal dildo.
Artisanal dildo.
What is that? That is the greatest term ever. But what is it?
Well, we have recently come out with this line of toys called Avant. And Avant, we have chosen color palettes, and they're hand-poured silicone. So it is a very hands-on, creative work, creating these. So we have different shapes that we use. We pour the liquid silicone in, we cure it, and then we pour the next color in, and then the next color. So we have workers who really, they're artists, and it has to be poured, but no two pieces are exactly the same.
Well, that's super cool.
So that's where it comes out. But Avant, we're coming out with a Pride line, which Tara's already invested in.
She was like, oh yeah.
So we're doing all the Pride flags. But they're not just like even colors. They're like the artist decided like we're going to put a short stripe of pink and a larger stripe of blue. So we've got the trans flag. We've got a power BDSM flag. We've got a rainbow flag. So they're really pretty and sweet. And then the more layers they are, the more expensive they are because it takes more time to make them. So when you look at the price, you look at how many color palettes went into it.
Yeah, my favorite is the one called Purple Rain because, of course, it does well. But there are so many of them. They came in, and my mom, she's different. She looked at them. She didn't really get them. But everyone in the office went, oh, yeah, those are going to sell. And I'm so glad they did, because sometimes we're wrong, but these were just gorgeous.
Well, today's toy buyer is there are a lot of us, myself included, who are really collectors. Like, I love my toy drawers, and I love the way that they look, and I love to see my stainless steel next to my glass, next to my silicone, and we line them up on shelves like action figures. Like, we love toys, and that's what Avant is for, and that's what artisanal means. Yeah. We're making toys for collectors. And we didn't, our first run of these, because they're labor intensive, we didn't do a ton of them. They sold so fast. And when you look at them, I always say they look like Muppet cocks. Like, they totally are like
they were just beautiful
stripes and everything.
Yeah, they came in, because I sometimes miss stuff when they came in, but I came in and they're all lined up on the back shelves, ready to go out the doors, and I just went, wow. And I had to go over and pick up each one and look at them. And a lot of times I was fascinated. I'm still fascinated. I was having a blast.
I'm happy to see them do well, because it was a little risky, but I have a background and I like high quality items. We have affordable high quality items, and it was a little risky for Blush. They trusted me, and they're doing well. So
that's what I like too about the companies, that Minnesotans are very price conscious. They are not name conscious. So they want the best toy they can get for their money. And it's just done so well for us, because a lot of high-end names, we get them in, people might ask about it, but we'll sell the first round, and then they hit a wall, they stop. And this stuff continually sells. It's been lovely.
Yeah, we like that sell through. And that tells you word of mouth. People are happy with the product, so
Well, I want to know what else is going on in the sex toy science lab. Is that where you guys kind of do research, or what? Tell us about that.
Well, part of our training today was us getting feedback on quality of the products that we make. And the good thing about the company that we are today, and I hope we always stay this way, is that we're pretty small. We're only a company that's about 11 years old now. We have owners and designers who are great listeners. And we're very nimble, and we can make changes very quickly. We can make things very quickly. The bigger companies, I always say, they move like ocean liners. You want to make a change, and you've got to go through all this bureaucracy and all this process, and they slowly make the change happen. But if something happens in our industry today, I like that we can pounce, and we can make it happen very quickly. So that's really fun. I've been working really hard with our team, and they take a lot of advice from me, which feels really good. Like, I feel very respected at Blush, but to make sure that we're not falling into this certain trap that's been very popular the last 10 years, where somebody has an idea, they fall so in love with their ideas, and their friends love them so much that they cheer them on. They come out with a product that is more hype than pleasure. So I always say there's these products that make great blog posts, but do they bring orgasms? They're interesting in design. There was a time where high design, we really hadn't seen the elegant modern designs that we see today. A person could put any kind of motor in an elegant casing and it would sell. But you keep them on the market long enough, and you start to realize the customers are talking, and they're not delivering orgasms. They're delivering dopamine at the point of sale. Oh, I have this beautiful item, and they take it home. It doesn't bring them pleasure. Then they're not going to have that sell through that you talked about. So right now we have a lot of design ideas, and then it's about A/B testing and shaking out and finding out, is this actually going to deliver for our customers? Is it going to feel good in their hands and feel good against their bodies? Are they going to feel like they got their money's worth? And that's a problem today with designers. You have a lot of academics who are coming into this industry, or industrial designers who think, oh, I could design a car, or I could design a sex toy, and a sex toy is racy, and it's, I can make it happen very quickly. But do you understand anatomy? Do you understand pleasure? Do you understand the buying market? Do you understand how Minnesota is different from San Francisco? Do you understand how San Francisco is different from Austin? Because different products will resonate in different ways for different people. Yeah. From packaging to product design to price point. And so there's a fine balance of us making sure that we are hitting every market, because we also love that person who shows up on a Saturday night and wants an inexpensive toy that they can have sex with all weekend long, and they can put in the trash because it didn't cost that much. You know, I love that customer too.
Yeah, not everything is lifetime. People might want something just for the weekend, and we try and have all that, because you can't just cater to one person.
And they might want something ugly that they'll feel a sense of regret over, and regret can be hot. So you know, I don't want to deny them that if they want that thing that they really shouldn't buy because it makes them feel good to buy it and have sex with it. I want them to have that experience. That's pretty too. You know,
because I mean, I couldn't survive just having high-end items in the store. I couldn't survive just having. I mean, there's got to be everything. We try and do that, and trying to find the right mix. Because like when we draw, you know, when something stops selling, like, well, do we replace it with two lesser expensive items? Do we do this? Like I said, thank God I have Tara. Because she has the whole store in her head. So she knows, well, if I get rid of this, I'm going to need to do this, or we need more space, or how's it going to work? And I'm not Target. I have 8 stores, and every single one of them is a different size. So how does this fit into the stores? You know, what's going to fit only into, like, this is only going to fit into the bigger stores, or where do I try that? Or the store's really good at anal, I'll give it a try, you know, put that there. Yeah, because she knows that. I mean, well, I have to ask her. You know, when we see something, I go, "This is interesting." She goes, "No, that store doesn't really. You know, which store should we put it at?" So we'll go back and forth, and I learn from her all the time. That store doesn't, never did well with this line, but they really like the colored dildos. Or what's really popular now? More body colored stuff. I mean, it used to be really fantasy colors. That still sells, but now people are wanting more
flesh tones,
but all flesh tones. I mean, I spent weeks when we had a partner site getting rid of the word flesh on all the Caucasian dogs. Drove me insane. So I had to change everything to peach, brown, and black.
But that's evolution. When I came to Blush, they had a flesh tone they called beige, and I just rolled around on the carpet like, no one wants to have sex with beige. Please stop the beige. And now I've got vanilla. So
that's better.
Yeah. I mean, it's just I'm trying to find the right words for everything, because I wanted something. Like, well, this one's not really brown. No, maybe I have to add the word cinnamon in. I mean, I always do
flavors. Flavors are great because people relate to. Who doesn't want to be mocha? Who doesn't want to be chocolate? Who doesn't want to be that? You'd have to be crazy to not want to be that. Yeah.
Couple things I want to just mention. I love a couple of Ducky's upcoming educational presentations that you have. Oh. We've got to hit the titles here. Pumping for Pleasure. Clit snips, vulvae, and penis pumps. You've got that going on multiple times, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then also strap-on harnesses and dildos. What's that class? I mean, how to or what to buy, the whole thing?
Well, these classes that you're seeing now are for retailers primarily. Okay. So actually, anybody could show up who wants to show up, but they're written and delivered for retail staff.
Okay.
And so that's teaching them, like the strap-on classes. People hear the word strap-on. It's one of the most commonly searched online terms, but strap-ons vary greatly. You could have a 2-strap, which is like a jock, right? Mm-hmm. You could have a single strap, which is like a thong. You can have a fixed ring, which means it can only fit up to probably 1.5-inch diameter toys. Or you could have an O-ring, and you can get different size O-rings that snap in. So you can get them of leather. You can get them of things that are machine washable. So when you start to get into it, and a harness is important. It serves a very important role. It's got to make you feel hot as fuck, right? You got to feel sexy in that thing. It's got to be comfortable. You've got to be able to clean it in the way that feels comfortable for you, right? Which leather's harder to clean, but nylon doesn't always feel the same. So there's a fine balance. In a good sex shop, you'll walk in there and say, I want a harness, and they'll start to ask you, well, do you want a single strap or 2-strap? And if you don't know what that is, then they'll start to walk you through this or that, right? And then they're like, D-rings or buckles, And they just start to present questions to you to get you to think about your body and your sex and what you're looking to achieve. But to me, there's nothing finer than selling somebody their first harness. It makes me feel so happy. And if you've never, as a human being, tried one on, even over your pants, it's like you don't understand them until you've worn one. ever.
So you have to try them.
You have to try it on. And you try it on, it's almost like, have you seen somebody in rock climbing gear? You want to try that gear on, right? Strap-on harnesses are a very similar thing because it's like, it's a tool. And then the person wearing the harness ends up, if they have the right tool, they can have just as much pleasure as the person receiving the tool that's in that harness, because you can get these double-ended toys that are harnessable. You can get toys that harness in different places on your body. You can take a vibrating cock ring and put it on before you put it through the harness or after you put it through the harness. So either one of you can feel the vibration. So harnesses to me are highly creative, really fun. And when somebody gets the right harness, it's my cock. They own it, and that's really sexy. But when they get the right harness, it's a transformation, so it's magical.
I see the ones coming in and I look at it and I go, how does that work? Play with it in the back room and stuff like that. Because I'm like, it's in the stores. I haven't worked a shift in a store for a while. I know generalities about some of the products. I read everything that comes in because if there's words, I've got to read it. But I saw, I'm like, okay, so here's sort of the starter ones. Here's this coming in, and I was like, one coming in from Sport Sheets, really like that. And then we got an underwear line, rodeo, yeah. And then I just like, I go, I want clothing and sheets and everything made out of this fabric. I mean, I was like turned on in the wear. I'm like, this is awesome. And then I'm like, oh, please let this do as well as I think it's going to. I was so excited that this was out there. But I also know not everyone, can afford that or do that. So we have the other ones. But that section of the store over the years has gotten larger and larger. It used to just be this sort of this vinyl thing. A
couple of items. Well, and we have a set that's coming out called Temptasia. And they let me be a part of the design process because I have so many opinions, obviously. And so they're boy shorts that feel so good, but they're sized exactly the same as Old Navy and the Gap. Because another problem you have is sizing. So if you have a good person you can have a conversation with, they understand the hip waist. If you have a store where they have a soft measuring tape behind the counter, they can measure your body versus the product, because you can't always try this stuff on, right? But so we did really accurate measurements on the packaging. We sized to a real American size, as opposed to, usually they're smaller than an XL will end up really being a medium, and that's disappointing. You spend your money on something and you want to go home and have this great experience. We want you to have a good experience. So you asked me about harnesses. I do an 1.5-hour class on it.
Okay, so let's get this out there. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, because we got to wrap up here, oilikethis.com. But Ducky, if people want to follow you and in general, where is that the best place to look for you?
Yeah, Ducky Doolittle on everything, Instagram and Twitter. My work as a sex educator is through blushnovelties.com.
Okay.
We don't sell. You'll have to find our products at a retailer, like Fantasy Gifts. But me personally, I'm all over the internet. Just Google. I'm everywhere. You'll find some videos. That was a long time ago.
We tend to interact, a little bit on Twitter. It's going through there when I see, stuff's going on. Hey,
yeah, we do. I'm just a real somebody. You can find me. It's me.
Well, I think it'd be great the next time you come back to town, and I hope it's going to be again soon. You've got to meet us back here and do this again.
Of course, always. You're stuck with me.
I love it.
I like that.
Stuck with Ducky.
Yeah, Ducky stuck.
Oh my. Okay, we're ending on that one.